Welcome to Unshelf Design Academy. I am Sarah Kirkpatrick, owner of Unshelf Design. I'm an interior designer and home stager. And today we are doing Christmas tree decorating. So full disclosure, I'm not big on holiday decorating. So I brought in someone who is, and I want to introduce you to Michelle Murphy of MMID, Michelle Murphy Interior Design. She's a colleague of mine in Calgary, wonderful interior designer, and loves decorating for holidays. So why don't you tell me a little bit about you and your business?
Sure. Hi, everyone. My name is Michelle. I'm a local interior designer here in Calgary, and I love decorating for the holidays, especially Christmas. So anytime I'm supporting a client with a renovation, I always throw in some decor if I can, if it's that time of year, or if they just need some help at that time of year, whether they're renovating or not. It's a great add-on to make their home feel more festive.
And you're big on trees and mantles.
Mantles.
Stairwells.
Yep, decorating all the railings on your stairs, incorporating any little pieces that we can, even on your dining table centerpiece, things like that.
Yeah, so this one we're focusing primarily on Christmas tree decorating. So let's jump right in. Our overview that we're going to be covering in today's video is a welcome. Faux versus fresh, why to use faux or why to use fresh, why and when, as well as considering your theme and color selection for your themes, for your tree. Are you going to go white? Are you going to go gold? Are you themed and traditional or super glam? We'll show you a few examples of that. We'll go into the decorating of the Christmas tree. There's a few awesome tips that Michelle has that'll make sure even an amateur like me can make the tree look beautiful. And then we're going to do a live demonstration and show you the decorating of a tree. So let's get started with fresh trees. And Michelle, why don't you tell us a little bit of the pros and cons and some tips on fresh trees?
Sure, absolutely. So fresh trees, I mean, it's something we've all known about, right? It's that sort of traditional scent that we're all used to, the lush and fragrant feel that you get from a fresh tree. It's just Christmas, right?
It's Christmas.
And, you know, they're a little more organic, have a little more of a unique shape, so they feel a little more, you know, cozier, right? And then, you know, it's sort of a family tradition to go and pick out your Christmas tree. I remember as a kid going and cutting down our own tree was just part of the holidays. So
Did you actually get to cut the tree down?
I mean, you know, I'd hold the saw and pretend I was doing it, but my dad did most of the work.
Yeah, I remember one time my dad took me to a friend's house. I was so little, and it was his friend, and he was holding the tree, and he gave me a child axe, and I hit it twice, and it fell over, and I thought I was magic. I was like, obviously he had pre-cut this thing and was just holding it up. But those are the kind of memories and stories that you're going to get with the fresh trees.
You definitely get that traditional festive holiday.
So what's wrong with fresh trees? Why would you might not want one of those?
Absolutely. I mean, they're definitely a little higher maintenance. So you do have to keep in mind that you have to water them daily and make sure that the water level is maintained so that, you know, you're keeping your fresh tree alive. You want to make sure that you're cleaning up all the needles that are shedding, which can kind of be a hassle.
And even if you water it, it'll still shed a little bit.
Absolutely.
Not as much.
Yes, definitely always will be shedding a little bit. And then you have to keep in mind that you're going to have to buy a new one each year. So that definitely drives up your cost a little bit. Might be a little less each year, but buying one every year definitely adds up.
Yeah, and also with fresh trees, like Michelle said, especially with pets, you know, sometimes the scent can be annoying, can be bad for them. All those needles falling down get stuck in the fur and dragged around the house. So there's definitely some pros and cons to the fresh trees. So up to you. We're going to cover both. Either way works for us, but that's some of the pros and cons of them. So what are some tips and tricks if you're going to have a fresh tree that you can that we should keep in mind?
Absolutely. So you want to keep a couple things in mind when you're trying to find a nice fresh tree for your home. So when you put your tree in the place that you want to have it, whether that's in front of a big window or maybe in the family room where everyone can enjoy it every day, you do want to keep in mind where you're placing it. If there's a heat source there, it is a fresh tree. You want to keep in mind that it is flammable. So make sure you don't put it too close to a heat source. The other thing you want to keep in mind is selecting the right tree. So for example, you know, if you're going and picking out a tree from a tree farm, there's quite a lot to choose from, and you want to make sure that you're picking a vibrant, fresh tree that has a lot of green and is going to last you. If it's already starting to shed a lot or show some wear, then you're going to see that start happening sooner in your home.
And if you're like a Charlie Brown tree kind of lover, maybe it doesn't matter as much.
That's true.
Another thing with the heat source too, I mean, yeah, for sure. As the daughter of a firefighter, having a tree near any heat source, like, absolutely not. But also the heat coming out of your vents will dry your tree out faster. So you'll have to water it more. If possible, try to keep it away from those heat vents. Okay, so caring for your real tree. Obviously, we mentioned we want to water it regularly. The trunk should always be submerged in water. You'll often get, whether you just get a bucket or there's some wonderful little tree stands that you can fill and they self-feed. So we've come a long way in tree watering, not necessarily the bucket on the leaned against a wall like I remember it being, but keeping that fresh, lots of water, and then sweeping up those needles. They really, especially in carpets, they can start sticking up and stabbing you in the feet. So these are things that you are going to have to be prepared for when you're doing a fresh Christmas tree. And yeah, any excessive needling, just make sure that the moisture content in your home. If you have hardwoods, from a design perspective, if you already have hardwoods in your home, you're probably already concerned about humidity, and therefore your tree might be loving that as well. So that's a little bonus, I would say. Any other thoughts on that?
Well, something, if you are worried about it getting too dry, you can always mist the tree as well to keep it a little bit fresher, longer.
Yes. And you can get some really cute misters. I mean, I have them just for my little trees. Might need a big,
bigger one. Yeah.
Okay, faux trees, pros and cons. I'll let you go over the benefits.
Sure, for sure. So faux trees are definitely a little bit different than fresh. There's many pros and cons to them as well. Something to consider is they're a little bit more cost effective. So you're able to reuse it for years and years, and you don't have to buy a new one every year. Also, if you have allergies, a faux tree is definitely going to help with that because you're not going to have to worry about pollen coming off the tree. That might irritate you in your home. The other thing is easy setup and take down. So rather than having to go get a tree every year, whether you cut it down yourself or not, tying it to the roof of the car, bringing it home can be a bit of a hassle. So it is a pro when you already have it in your home and you can just pop it right up.
I don't know, easy. I have an old faux tree at my house, or permanent tree, and all the branches are labeled A to J, and it's a task, but at least it's easier than strapping things to my car.
There you go.
Okay, so faux trees, we love the sustainability of them, and you can, maybe this is a tip for later, but you can spray them with scents, essential oils, so that you can kind of get that. But yeah, lots of pros to having a faux tree. I think the biggest one for people is that it's just like there for you. It's ready to go, easy to use. But I know that there's a lot of cons to faux trees too. So what are those?
So a few cons, the natural fragrance that you just talked about, right? You don't really get that anymore. Luckily, there are some ways around it, but definitely something to think about if you're used to a fresh tree. By keeping it around, you need the storage space. You have to store it somewhere in your house. So, plan for a good chunk of space for that. And then they're not always made with the best materials. They're not always biodegradable or made with a sustainable material. So it's something to keep in mind if, you're really adamant about having sustainable items in your home.
Yeah. And it will be more, there's pros and cons, again, of sustainability with faux versus real trees. These are going to go in the landfill eventually, and it's plastic. It's something to consider, but you're kind of using it for hopefully many years. So you're going to have to do a little bit of thought on that, but that's definitely one of the cons. But there are some tips and tricks if faux tree is for you and you have the storage for it, and you just want that easy setup. So what are some tips and tricks that we have to keep in mind?
For sure. So you're going to get a higher quality tree, hopefully, and you're going to get a longer life out of it. So if you invest a little bit more up front, you're probably going to have a tree that will last you, a good amount of your life, and you're not going to have to replace it every few years. Something to keep in mind when you're storing it, a lot of people probably keep it in the basement, which is probably a good place for it, or the garage. Cool and dry is a good tip so that you don't have to worry about any damage to the tree during storage. Again, with fire hazards, just think about using LED lights that aren't too warm to the touch, just so you're not creating any heat source against that tree.
And that's for faux or real?
Yes, absolutely. And then strong branches are something to think about. So when you're trying to pick out new trees, just make sure that it has some stronger branches or something that's going to hold up, again, that higher quality, so that your decor can sit on it and not have to worry about weighing it down too much.
Yeah, some of the one that we're going to show you in our demonstration is a lower quality tree. It's an office tree, and we'll show you the difference. The ones that you may have for your home, they have a lot of wire in them so that you can bend them up, helps hold ornaments on. You can really tell the difference. And in terms of storage, I actually have one of those racks that attaches to the ceiling in my garage, and we store it there. A little bit of a pain to get up and down, but definitely it's out of the way, but you do need that space. So lots of great tips and tricks for the faux tree. And now our favorite part, decorating schemes. So there are so many different ways that you can decorate a tree. I'm sure you've seen there's a black tree trend. Everyone is going all black everything. There's an all white everything trend, the white and the sparkles and the snowflakes. Then there's those traditional that are just, reds and greens and more sort of your rustic feel. That's the old school. And then there's trees like mine where sometimes I wish that I had a beautiful, stunning tree, but then I have a lot of like memory pieces. So it kind of just looks like a garage sale got dumped onto a tree, but it means a lot to me. So any thoughts on decorating schemes?
Absolutely. So some of the most common that I've come into with helping clients out, minimal is one of the key ones. Just keeping it a little lighter, really bringing out those pieces that either mean a lot to you or something that stands out a little bit more rather than filling it too much.
That's the difference between us. She's minimal, I'm maximalist. So
another way to go is thematic. So whether that's a particular color or you're going into a particular theme.
Barbie core.
Sure. Pink. I mean, that's the trend right now, right? So you can pick a theme that you like or that fits your decor in your home, and that can be sort of your inspiration for your tree. More of a traditional tree, like you mentioned, is always going to be around. That red, green, what you're used to from growing up, it's always going to be a showstopper. And then that sort of winter wonderland, the white, modern, clean look with all the neutrals.
It's like bringing the outdoors in.
Exactly. Mm-hmm. It's just a nice, fresh touch in your space.
Yeah, and consider how that fits into the vibe you want within your space. When you walk into that living room, do you want it to feel bright and glammy and like the glitz and glam of the holidays? Or is it a place that you want to get to and like cozy in and it's a warm glow in the corner? Think about how you want to feel, not just how it looks. And whether or not you pair it with the rest of your living room or not, this is a statement piece of its own. And I know that some people are actually doing 2 trees now.
Yes, that's very popular.
Some people can't decide, but I feel like it's people like me that your typical tree is just every ornament under the rainbow that your parents got you. And then you kind of want that beautiful tree that you can also showcase at the front of the house. So that's an option as well. It's splitting
Absolutely,
it up.
Yeah. A lot of clients like that. They'll have sort of their family room as their tree that they, put all their special ornaments on. And that's Christmas morning. That's your family tree. Mm-hmm. And then they'll have one, even maybe more than one throughout the house. That's maybe a particular theme or style just to make it a pretty showpiece.
You'd have to like decorating trees a lot to have more than one. Maybe each kid gets one. There's like a Minions tree and a
if I had enough
Paw
space,
Patrol tree.
I would do it.
You would. Okay, so the building blocks of a Christmas tree. This is what you're going to have to gather, whether you're following along with us or you're going to do it on yourself. Take these notes. These are like the pieces that you're going to need for your tree. I'll just talk them quickly. Michelle will go over them. So your tree skirt for along the bottom, tons of different things you can do from plaid to faux furs to glitz and sparkle, lots of cool tree skirts, and we'll talk about why. Lights, whether they're warm and white, think about the hue of those lights. Organics, so you can put, orange peels or cranberries. You can get natural and earthy. Ornaments, obviously, your nice balls or any of your memorable pieces. A tree topper, whether that's an angel or a star or a Batman, who even knows? Like, you can put anything up there. It's your focal piece. And then garland as well. I know it seems like, why would you put garland on a tree that's already made of garland? But there's some beautiful things that you can do. Do you want to touch on each of those a little more?
Yeah, absolutely. So sort of starting with that base and the tree skirt. That's sort of your grounding element, right? So you want to start with something that's going to support the rest of the tree. So something that will, create a little cozy feel, but nothing that's going to take away from the rest of your tree as well. When you jump into lights, you want to think about whether you like colored versus white. There's certainly options for both.
Or maybe black.
Yep, you never know. If you have a certain theme, that Barbie core, maybe you're finding some pink lights. I don't know. When you bring in those organics, you're getting that texture, that nice feel from having some of those elements in there, right? So
because that's the tradition of tree decorating.
Exactly.
It started as organic elements before we started getting into
added all these
plastic.
Yeah, all these extra elements have happened over the years, right? It all started that way with some of those nice citrus elements and things like that. Ornaments, I mean, you could go on forever with all the options out there.
From the dollar stores to the Holt Renfrews, there are ornaments.
Exactly, and all those personal pieces, right, that you've collected over the years as gifts. I mean, it ends up being, such a fun part of decorating the tree, right, is incorporating all those memories. The topper, I mean, that's your showpiece at the top, right, to finish off the tree. So make sure it's something that, means something to you and stands out a little bit. Again, you don't want it to take away from the rest of the tree, so it's still something that can be a little bit of a showpiece, though. And then that garland, again, it's more texture. It can always be another color. You can bring in some different elements, maybe something a little shiny or textural, just to bring in something a little different.
And this isn't even all of the things. I mean, you can have ribbons, you can have sprays of greenery, extra greenery. You can just have a lot of items that you can put onto the tree that we didn't even cover. But what you do need is a step ladder. So make sure that you have that for the top of the tree. We actually have a tradition in our family for the tree topper. Every year, even as adults, my brother and I alternate putting the star on my dad's house. And whoever is not putting, or the star on the tree, whoever's not putting it on has to get on all fours and act as the ladder. So it really sucks when I'm the one that's on, I'm the ladder. But those kind of things, if you don't have a really strong brother or a really sad sister, then just make sure you have a step ladder, because I don't want you tipping the tree over trying to reach for anything, and we want to make sure that the tree looks even. So that's my safety moment for the video. Okay, tree basics. So starting with the base, we want to prep the tree, make sure it has easy access for watering, really decide where you're putting it in your house, again, away from heat elements. But remember, you're going to have to be decorating the back, so pull it out from the walls when you're wrapping lights around, or you're going to end up just doing that zigzag on the front. But also, making sure that you can get in there to add water, especially obviously for a real tree. You're going to be doing that quite frequently. And then making sure you have room to fluff branches up. So especially both in real, you have to kind of, after you take that ribbon off, it sort of falls. You do have to give it about, 12 hours, I think?
Usually minimum 12 hours to let it sort of settle a bit before you start decorating.
Especially if it was an outdoor tree lot, and it's super cold, at least here in Calgary. Some of you may be a little luckier. It will thaw, so you want it to fall. And if you're putting together a faux tree, you're going to have to move all those branches down and get it all prepped and ready before you do anything. Positioning the tree stand in a way that allows access, as I mentioned, making sure, they all have those legs. You want to be able to get in there with a watering can. You don't want to be there with like little cups over and over. So make sure it's an easy thing for you to do. And I think that's it. We don't always have to use a bucket anymore, but lots of different options. And then wrap it up. So this is where we start getting into the fun part, lights.
Yeah, so I mean, lights, it's the little shining sparkle that you have in your tree, right? So, considering that color, right? There's so many options out there nowadays for all the different types of LEDs. White, multicolored, you can stick with a particular color. Maybe you really want to go red this year. So you can pick out a set of red lights and build around that.
Oh, they come in every color now.
Absolutely. And so the white will give you more of a classic, elegant feel, and the colored is a little more traditional, a little more playful. So just depending on that theme that you're going with, that will sort of help dictate what color would be best for your tree.
And do you know what the worst thing is? When you wrap your whole Christmas tree and then a light is out and now you have to unwrap the whole thing. At least some of the newer ones, if one light goes out, the whole strand doesn't stop working, but we should plug in the lights before you wrap it. Yeah,
definitely something to check before you start.
I've been there.
So have I.
The old school lights. Yeah. And then would you recommend starting at the bottom of the tree and working your way to the top, or do you like starting at the top and make your way down?
I usually start at the top. I find it a little bit easier to start at the top and work my way down. Not that you can't start the other way around, but it is a little bit easier, I find, to start there and work in as you go down the branches.
And then remember when you're wrapping the lights to look for which end is the female or male end of the outlet, because you're going to have to plug that in at the bottom. So many lights come with extensions. That's why they have both ends, so that you can keep adding more and more string lights to it. So just make sure you have the male end at the top. Nope. Female end at the top and male at the bottom, so that when you get to the bottom, you can plug that into your extension cord and you don't have to have the cord running.
Absolutely.
Running
yep.
from
Great
top
tip.
bottom. Also, again, firefighter's daughter here, please turn off the lights before you leave the house. We just don't want, especially if you have pets, so many reasons to turn off these lights. You never know if something's going to go, energy usage, but just fire safety. You can use timers. So I have a timer on mine that comes on at, well, after daylight savings. It's dark so early, so it comes on at 6 p.m. and it'll go off at around 11 o'clock so that I can finish up what I'm doing and head up to my room, and it's still nice and a beautiful glow, and then it turns off automatically and I don't have to worry about it as much. So what are some of the different kinds of lights you have to think about?
Absolutely. So you kind of lean between the mini and sort of your standard size, or what I see the most when I'm working with clients. But you also get into some of the larger size lights as well that maybe have a little bit of a shape to them. So there are different varieties out there depending on what you're hoping to get from the tree. I usually say that a smaller tree, if you're looking more in the 5-foot range, to try to go with something a little bit smaller. You just want to match the scale to the size of the tree. If you have a larger tree, 8+ feet, if you maybe have vaulted ceilings and you want to take advantage of that height, you can go a little bit bigger with that light bulb just so that it kind of showpieces a little bit better and doesn't get lost in a larger tree. Some good tips for your sort of 5 to 7 foot standard tree is to plan for having around 500 to 700 bulbs on your tree. So think about that when you're picking out your string of lights.
They do say on the box, you don't have to sit there and count them.
You can if you want.
You can, yeah. If you do use smaller lights on a bigger tree, just know that it's going to look more like twinkles and less like light on it. So if that's what you're going for, certainly, or maybe the opposite, if you're a maximalist and you just love the look of those kind of big outdoor bulbs, you could put less of them on and they become ornaments, really.
Sure. Yep.
Especially the colored ones. There's just so many things you can do. Oh, maybe I'll start liking Christmas decorating.
Maybe.
Okay. Garland and tinsel.
That was great.
Thank you. Thank you very much. All right. Garland and tinsel. So this is tinsel a little bit, sort of. The one thing I do want to talk about with garland, or with tinsel specifically, is it's not environmentally friendly. This is my sustainable moment, and then I'll get off the horse. But those little, silver strands that you can put up tinsel, really bad for the environment, really dangerous for pets, kids. So be selective when you're doing that. And then I'm going to let Michelle be positive now.
Sure. So there's lots of options out there for garland and tinsel. So you can certainly lean on some more sustainable options for sure. But try to think about that theme or color scheme that you're going with for your tree and try to incorporate that. So the example of the gold, if you're going with sort of that gold theme, maybe that's a great way to bring in some more texture and complement the greenery of the tree. Silver and gold are more that classic sort of look, if that's what you're going for. Green and red, a little more traditional, maybe what you're used to growing up. And then you can incorporate some more fun and unique things such as beads, ribbon, popcorn, just little elements, again, that bring in a fun texture and complement the tree.
Yeah, popcorn. Do you remember, like with the string and the needle and you're just threading it? That's fun.
Yeah.
I like that.
It can be part of the environment, the ambiance, right? It's sitting there in that tradition of doing that with your family, right?
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah, and you can use ribbon, like you were saying, just strings of ribbon or bows. There's so many different ways to not use tinsel.
Yeah, exactly. Avoid the tinsel, go with some of these other options.
And then when you're putting it on, I just kind of just am like, and yep, that's nice.
Done.
Any tips on how to make garland not look like you just kind of placed it there?
For sure. I usually try to lean a little bit more towards spreading it out a little bit, trying to weave it through the branches so it looks a little more intentional. And then sort of a zigzag pattern is a nice way to get it down the tree, but do keep in mind that you want to spread it out enough that it doesn't just sit in one sort of column on the tree. You want to sort of spread it out enough that it fills the tree. And then again, try to think a little bit about being a little more organic. So when you're doing the lights on a tree, you kind of keep them a little more symmetrical, I guess. But when you do tinsel or garland, try to get a little more organic, play with it a little bit, not straight lines so that it feels like it fits in a bit better with that organic feel of the tree.
And also considering depth. I mean, your tree is not just a 2D image, right? Mm-hmm. So if you start getting the garland, when Michelle said weaving it, don't just think about weaving it in and amongst the branches, but within to create depth. And then your tree will just look a lot more full and layered, as we like to say.
Absolutely.
Mm-hmm. So what kind of sizes are you thinking for garland? I don't know. I have a standard 5-foot tree. Am I like...
Yeah, that's great.
About here, right?
Sure. So again, that standard sort of 5 to 7 foot tree that most people have, I lean towards probably 24 to 40 feet of garland. That's going to give you...
That's more than this.
Yes, a couple times. That's going to give you a fuller feel. It's going to allow you to integrate into the tree, like you said, into the branches a bit more towards that trunk of the tree so that it feels a bit fuller. The less you have, it's going to look more like you just placed a little bit here and there.
Mm-hmm. And with any decorating, here's just a broad decorating tip, but specific for Christmas trees right now. After you've done a little bit, step back. Like take a broad look, because when you're in there and you're placing things, it all might look fine, and then you step back and there's just a gaping hole, or you'll really see a lot. So step in and out a few times for a wider view.
Good idea.
Oh, thanks, Michelle. Thank you so much. All right, ornaments. Giant ornaments, baby ornaments. So ornament placement is a big part of your tree, as well as so many different styles. There's going to be a lot to consider, especially if you're a more traditional person or you're going to have, decorative glam. But tell me a little more about ornaments and why and how and all of the things.
Oh my gosh. Again, this could be a whole series just on ornaments. I mean, it's endless. The first thing I usually suggest is considering where you're placing those ornaments. So not only in relation to each other, but in relation to the tree. So, maybe tuck some ornaments a little bit deeper into the tree to, again, that volume, creating more of a full feel rather than just all on the edge of the tree. So that's a nice way to sort of create some interest too when you're looking at the tree, some depth. Variety. So, it's nice to have all, a certain theme or color, but can you get some different sizes, different shapes to integrate and create a little more interest that way as well with the different varieties of textures and colors, anything that you're ready to incorporate.
Even these, super similar, obviously. Yeah. One of them is more opaque, one of them is more transparent. This, when it's placed in front of a bulb, it's going to glow beautifully, whereas this one is not. But this one is a feature on its own. You got sparkles, you got no sparkles. So even something that looks so similar can have a really big impact on the placement that you put it. By lights, not by lights.
Mm-hmm. Next, I usually say when sort of starting on the tree, think about the size and even the weight of some of these pieces. So I usually tend to put bigger, heavier pieces towards the bottom of the tree. Not only does that sort of fill the biggest part of the tree, but also it's, again, sort of that safety thing. You don't want any of the bigger ones that weigh a bit more falling and, maybe breaking ornaments on the way down or something.
And Michelle and I both have pets, so
yes.
Those tails, they'll take off those light ones.
Absolutely. Even I have a cat, and he sometimes likes to play with some of the ornaments. So I try to keep the heavier ones at the bottom so that it's a little bit harder for him to get them off the tree.
And also just visually, I mean, as with you'll notice in art and decorating, like it just grounds it. It just makes it, kind of gives it that foundation for you to build up onto.
Exactly. Yeah. Then try to incorporate the sizes throughout. So, maybe keeping those heavier, bigger pieces at the base, but don't be afraid to incorporate some larger ones throughout the tree and mix those in with some of the medium and smaller sizes. Again, it's that variety, creating interest, just brings the tree to life and creates that full feel.
And those big ones, I mean, like Michelle said, start with those, but not only start with them at the bottom, decide where you want those focal points to be. If there are some bigger holes in the tree that you're going to have to fill, start with the big ones, and then you can start moving to medium and small, because your small pieces are filler ornaments, but you want to make sure that you have those big features or those really important ones first on the tree so that you can make sure they have a spot for it. And then how many ornaments? Like, I mean, minimalist, maximalist, this could be a bit of a,
Yeah,
we're going to disagree here, I think.
I would lean towards less is more myself, but
and I'm like, fill it with all the things
everything. A good sort of rule of thumb for that standard 5 to 7 foot tree is between 50 and 100 ornaments.
50, 100.
Yes, exactly. And when you're looking to purchase ornaments, if you do want a set, they do come usually in that range. So that helps when you're trying to purchase some new ornaments. That's sort of the size that most of the sets are anyway. But yeah, just depending on how full you want it. If you like a little bit of a lesser, more minimal look, lean towards that 50. If you want a fuller feel, or maybe you have a lot of family ornaments that you want to incorporate as well, then maybe lean towards that 100.
Yeah. Okay. Ribbons and sprays. So after now, this is step 4. You've got your tree up, you've got your lights on, you've got some ornaments placed throughout. Before we get to more specialty items like the peak, let's talk about organics and sprays. So, organics and sprays. Ribbon, for example, absolutely beautiful. You can tie it both in like a big bow on it, or you can loop it so it's sort of like a beautiful cascade. Having things just draped down the side of the tree. We do have an example of a beautiful ornament that we'll show you in the demonstration with a bird feather that really just like makes its way down the tree and adds those layers. But this is where you can get into playing with more organics and cranberries and putting those pieces on, or like this picture shows, bundling some items with ribbons that you can create ornaments out of.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, it's another way to add some texture, add some color variety throughout the tree. And if you need to fill in some gaps, it's a great source to do that. And just trying something different. So if you have a certain theme in mind, you can try to incorporate pieces that tie into that theme.
Yeah. As you can see, things like poinsettias, berries, pine cones, holly, like really think outside the box. This is how our forefathers, our ancestors used to decorate their trees. And I really just love organics and including them on trees. I think it just makes it feel so much homier, a lot less plastic. And like you bought this tree at Home Sense and everything you bought was from the dollar store or Walmart for it. Like that's these pieces, these dried fruits, dried because otherwise rotting, are really going to make that tree feel like it was meant to be there, like it's part of your home.
Yeah.
Okay, so let's just do the top of the tree. Nice. The climax, the peak. Any other top
Sure.
languages? You know any other languages?
No, I think you're good.
I had to like build it up. I was like, this is the end. The cherry on top of the tree.
Exactly.
So, when I was young, we had an angel that was actually my Nana's on my dad's tree. Now I have it on my tree, and you plug it in, and her skirt lights up, and it's absolutely stunning. But then you can also, like you'll see in our demo, just have stars, or you can put anything. Like you start Googling tree toppers on Google, people get creative.
Yeah.
It's really fun. Maybe we'll show you a few examples of some really creative tree toppers. But what would you suggest when you're picking out a tree topper? Why? What color? Should it light up? Does it have to light up? Is it too heavy? What if it's too small?
The options are endless. There's a lot of things you can think about when picking out a tree topper. The biggest thing I usually suggest to start with is scale. Yeah. So think about the size of your tree and how that's going to relate to your tree topper. I used to have a little 3-foot tree when I was in an apartment, and it was hard trying to find a tree topper that didn't overpower the tree because a lot of them are quite big. But I mean, you run into the same problem if you have quite a large tree as well. You don't want it to be too small that it gets lost, right? Mm-hmm. So trying to find something that will work with the size of your tree is really important.
Unless you're intentionally doing that Charlie Brown one that's like,
then
this is the tree, you know? So unless it's intentional, yes.
Yeah. Then you want to, again, play into your theme, right? So if you're leaning on a particular color, maybe incorporate some of that color into your tree topper. If you're playing into, Barbie again or superheroes, think about how that can be incorporated into your tree topper.
So you just put a Barbie on the top?
Why not? Maybe she's in her convertible.
Oh, shit. You picture it already.
Perfect.
Strapped on there with your garland.
Yeah. Exactly. So once you have your tree topper sorted, I find that that's sort of a piece that, like you said, ends up being something that's really sort of a family piece, right? So that can always be something that's a little more sentimental that you keep each year and change your theme around. So consider that as well. Maybe you want to go more neutral so that it plays into whatever you choose each year. And you can also start incorporating some of your sentimental pieces in at this time. Once you have your tree topper on and your tree decorated, this is when you can start incorporating some of those family heirlooms.
So if for the most part you're doing the kind of ball ornaments that we talked about and you don't have a ton of those sentimental pieces that you got, then sometimes it's good to just wait till the end till you see the whole thing and then you start putting those on because you know exactly where they're going to stand out. Now, if you have to take one thing off to put it on, this is really just the finessing and making sure that what's important is showcased and that you have those pieces on there. And then, yeah, obviously for toppers, there's just so many. This is where there's a lot of religious symbolism. There's non-religious symbolism, like however you celebrate and whatever you celebrate. I love the idea of the tree topper being like a representation of your tradition, your family, and what's important for you.
Yep, I agree.
So here's just a few quick pics of some inspiration shots. Obviously, you can see the white and bright, the color, the glam, more minimalism versus maximalism. Sometimes you can barely see the tree, and other times it's just the feature. And then that top left one, obviously, you can see how they've created a whole room and considered the theme beyond the Christmas tree. So we're going to do a really awesome demonstration for you. Michelle has prepped a Christmas tree, leaving a good gap, and she's going to show how she goes about continuing to decorate a tree, things to keep in mind, and then you can see a live action how-to of Christmas decorating. Keep in mind all of these rules that we gave you. Rules, I say pretty lightly, foundational elements, and then this is where you kind of get to go crazy. So let's head over to the Christmas tree. All right, we're going to decorate a tree, and Michelle's going to take this over, but as you can see, she has kind of pre-decorated this faux tree. This tree is not real. You'll get some up close of it, but you'll be able to see the difference. It's not a really high quality tree, but it's short and it's easy for an office in this case, but Michelle has elevated it with some ornaments. And this tree actually comes with built-in pine cones and cranberries, as well as lights. So it's very Sarah friendly, easy to decorate. And then Michelle's gonna take it up 10 notches from here. So where do we start?
Perfect. Usually I like to start with the base of the tree and get that tree skirt or basket put in at the bottom to sort of elevate the base. So we don't have a true tree skirt, but we do have a nice knit blanket that has a lot of texture, which is great if you don't have a tree skirt available. So we'll just get that down here.
Okay. So Michelle and I had a discussion, and I love the tassels on this. So we're going to do tassel out, but minimalist Michelle would prefer there not be tassels. So kind of do whatever works for you.
Yep.
I'm just kind of like layering it a little and poofing it out.
Just give it a little bit of an organic feel, right? You don't want it to feel like a rectangular blanket. So whatever you can do to sort of create some texture and a nice cozy feel.
And you're just wrapping it around.
Yep, just wrap it around the base. It doesn't have to be anything fancy. Honestly, the looser and freer that you do it, it feels a bit nicer.
And do I need to have a tree skirt or?
No, I mean, tree skirts aren't required by any means. I mean, really, they're decorative at this point to hide the base of a tree that probably isn't the prettiest part. The stands typically aren't really a showpiece. So it just adds a nice texture and groundwork for the tree. And yeah, it's just a nice decorative piece.
And I guess if it was a real tree, it would sort of help collect all the needles that might be falling.
Absolutely,
easier to shake out.
A good way to clean up for sure.
Okay, base is on, tree skirt, now what?
So next we would typically do the lights. In this case, we are lucky that this one already comes with lights.
And we would start at the top or the bottom?
I usually start at the top. So check your lights first. Don't forget. Make sure they work. Then start at the top and work your way down. Just wrapping around the tree. Again, in sort of a symmetrical way to make sure that you're covering the tree. But again, think of that organic feel of a tree. You don't want it to feel so straight and linear that it doesn't look natural.
And then weaving both into the branches
in and out a bit.
Depth. Yeah.
Absolutely. And then you get different feel with those lights, right? Some you see a bit more, some you see a little bit less. So it's a nice feel.
And this is sort of a traditional look that we're going with. We got white lights.
Yes, sort of a more traditional, a little more elegant feel, right? With the white lights, a little bit cleaner.
But still earthy because of our
built-in
cranberries.
It balances out nicely.
Okay, so lights are on.
Yep.
Check.
Yep.
Ornaments mostly on.
Yes.
I see that you missed this section.
Yeah, so this was intentional. Don't worry.
Okay.
So I left a small space here just so I could walk you through a little bit about how I usually recommend placing ornaments. So as you can see with what we've already got, we have a few different sizes. We have a larger size down here, sort of this mid size, and then the smaller size. It's nice to integrate that variety of sizes to create sort of some more interest, just a nice unique feel. Again, it leans more towards that organic feel when you have a bit more variety, right? So we do have one more of those big, larger ornaments left. So I'd love to put that sort of, you know, a little bit away from this one since that's a bigger element already. You want to have a little bit of space between some things that match. So if we want to integrate it over here, think about a bigger piece. You want to have it a little bit in the branches, but nothing that's too crazy deep because it is a bigger showstopper, right? Then you want to think about some of the other elements that you can put around. So you start with those larger big pieces, then you move to that middle size, right? So start with those grounding larger pieces, and then you can incorporate some of these. So think about placing them. In this case, we have a few different styles, so it plays nicely together without being the same over and over. Which again, that dynamic organic feel is nice. You can bring in different textures. If you have different colors in your case, you can of course play with those. And
I just wanted to mention, there's a lot of different ways you can do ornaments. Michelle and I chatted. In this case, because this has already pine cones and branches, we're trying to spread out the ornaments so it's just a nice even. But what you can also do is if you hook a few of them together, 2 or 3, it's a little bit more maximalist, but what you can do is create clusters, and then those clusters become showstopper focal points, and you would do those more as if you're placing ribbons around.
You'd spread them out a little bit more to sort of create those groupings rather than as spread out as they are in this sort of tree.
Yeah, so kind of decide what you want your look, but yeah, in this case, let's just spread them out.
Remember to integrate the different sizes and shapes that you might have. Right? Try to play off of the different colors.
And this one we don't have a hook for. So how can we say you're at the end, you have like one beautiful piece.
So one way you can sort of integrate these if you don't have enough hooks or something like that is tuck them in the branches. I mean, just make sure that you're not leaving them too close to the edge so that you don't have to worry about them falling out. But even if you just tuck it in a little bit, not too far.
Get lost.
Yep. Then you can kind of see it still looks like another one of the ornaments, but it's creating that depth again by having some that are a little bit more inset and some that are a little bit closer to the edge of the tree.
And so in this case, we don't really have any like memorable pieces or anything, but I did notice there were a few funky little birds in here.
Yeah, so we have a couple birds in here, which would sort of take the place of maybe a spray or something like that that adds a little more volume and texture to the tree, right? It's just something a little bit different. I also like the shape of these because they sort of play on that down flowing shape, so it's a little more cascading, right? So you can integrate those into the branches, kind of tucking them in like we just did with that last ornament. But I usually don't go too deep with these. I mean, depending on what they are. These I like to still see what they are, so I don't put them in too deep. But again, just adding some more texture to the tree.
Okay. And then I think we're at the star. Is that right?
I think so. Yeah. In this case, we don't have any garland in this tree. If you did, or tinsel, that would be integrated before moving on to the star.
All your organics.
Yeah, all those organic pieces that come in this tree, that would sort of be where you integrate them now because the ornaments sort of act as your foundation, right? So
this is where you could
integrate some garland, right?
We don't have gold. We don't want any on this one, but this is where you can decide if you want to loop it like this and work your way around.
And again, same as ornaments, tuck in and pull out a little bit to create some depth. And think of that organic flowing feel. Oh, beautiful. You're ready for the office party. Perfect. All right, and now that we have our base of our tree set up here, all our foundational elements, we're kind of at that finishing touch, right? So our tree topper. In this case, we have a beautiful star. Again, it can be anything that is sentimental to you, whether it's something that you really like, a family heirloom, something like that. That's sort of your grounding at the top, right? That sort of finishes the tree. So just think about what means something to you and your family.
And in this case, this is actually an office tree. So we just wanted something that was neutral, non-denominational. Everyone is welcome. It's just a beautiful glow. So in this case, this suited the space really well.
Exactly.
We put this one up here in advance because it's heavy and it was tipping over at the top. So
yes.
Do keep in mind the weight of the top of it. In this case, this tree doesn't have a strong base at the top. So you may have to use some sort of twine to really tie it on so that it's not flopping over. But that's why we're not putting it on this video, because
we've got it
precarious right now. Yeah. But yeah, it just doesn't need any lights. It doesn't need any more electrical, and it's just easy and up there.
Ready to go. Yeah.
Any other final touches about?
No, I mean, this is kind of it for our tree. I mean, this would also be the point where you'd want to add any of those sentimental pieces, right? If you have, some family ornaments and things, get those in here now with the tree topper so that you can sort of finish off your tree.
I know that at my house we have little ornaments for all of our dogs that are no longer with us with their faces, and we line those up across the top after the rest of it's put together.
See, it's a nice family thing, right? That means something to you, and that's perfect. That's the perfect finishing touch.
Yeah. So in terms of tradition, I think we all agree that Michelle should get down on her hands and knees so that I would put the topper up, right?
Don't know about that.
You're lucky it's up there already. All right, that is our Christmas tree. Thank you so much for joining us, and I hope you have a very, very Merry Christmas. Thank you for tuning in to Unshelf Design Academy, and don't forget to check out our other videos. We do have one on holiday mantle decorating that is quite festive, as well as all other types of decorating videos for the rest of the year. Thank you so much, Rochelle, for putting this together.
Thank you so much for having me.
Your tree is stunning.
Awesome.
And I could not have done it without you, and I hope you come back.
I will. I certainly will.
Good. All right. Thank you so much, and we'll see you at the next one.
Thank you.